Please join me in welcoming world number one, Scottie Scheffler. Scottie, how does it feel to be back at LACC?
Yeah, good to be back. I have good memories of this golf course. I remembered most of the holes before we showed up this week, so that's kind of unusual for me. Usually I don't remember too much. So yeah, good memories of this place, and looking forward to a nice week.
What do you remember most about the golf course?
I remember it being pretty challenging. I don't recall playing my best here during the Walker Cup, but I remember it being pretty difficult, and my memory serves me well. It's a pretty hard course, you know. It's got a good mix of holes where you have some of those holes that you really need to get after, and then you have those other holes out here where it's you're kind of hanging on, and so you're hitting a lot of different clubs into greens, and it gives you a lot of options, and it's a really good test.
Talk a little bit about your game right now. Obviously coming in good shape, but how do you feel kind of from a prep standpoint?
I feel good. I had a good off week at home last week. Got some good rest. It's always important. Four weeks in a row is a pretty long stretch for me, especially being in contention most of those weeks. And so those weeks were definitely long, and I got some good rest last week.
We're going to go here on your left.
Hi, Scottie. You played today with Omar Morales. What can you tell me about his golf game, and what do you guys talk about?
Yeah, he seemed like a good player. I mean, he's only going to be a junior in college, and so anytime you can just qualify for this tournament, you obviously got a pretty good amount of talent, and you can compete out here on tour. And he seemed like he hit it pretty hard, and had good hands around the greens, and hit a lot of different shots. And so he seemed to me like a pretty talented guy.
Here on your right to Luke.
Hi, Scottie. I saw you testing some putter, like a putter on the putting green yesterday, and playing with the weights. I was just wondering what was going on there, what you were kind of looking for out of that.
Yeah, so I practice with a wedge from time to time, just as a feel thing, just to feel the release, and so that's what I was doing. It's a good drill for me, kind of to put the wedge in there behind the hole, and I can really just kind of feel everything with my hands, and that's been a good drill for me in the past, and something that I go back to from time to time.
And then what about the putter you were testing too on the putter?
There was one that had a little bit it looks a lot like mine, but it's just a little bit bigger. I don't know what it's called, but it's just slightly bigger than the one that I use.
And like
now.
Similar weight and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh.
On your left to Ann.
So are you changing putters this week, or?
You guys can find out Thursday.
Well, what goes into thinking in the philosophy of changing before a major like that? I mean, how much of a big decision is that for you or anyone?
I mean, I don't ever take decisions on switching equipment lightly. I think it's strange that I've been struggling the past few weeks with my putter. Being the last two, the PGA actually felt like I rolled it pretty good. A few putts here or there that lipped out that should have gone in. Memorial obviously had an off week on the greens, or else I probably would have won that one. But I mean, sometimes just got to bring another putter around there to make the original one scared. I've never really been one to try and overthink things, so I try and keep things as simple as possible. And so I looked at that one that's a little bit bigger, and I'm still, kind of undecided on what I think of it.
On your right.
Scottie, do you think there is a scoreable stretch on this hole? And then just an overall thought on 16, 17, and 18.
Yeah, I would say if I was to choose a non-scoreable stretch, it'd probably be 16 through 18. Yeah, the golf course I feel like the front nine's a bit easier than the back. I mean, the front nine, you have hole 6, you have hole 8 that are very gettable, you have hole 1 that's very gettable. And then let me think. Like 3's another wedge hole where the fairway's pretty wide, and so there's definitely some opportunity on the front, and as you turn, you get 10 that's a wedge, and then the golf course kind of just hits you, and you got to play. I think 11 through 18 is probably the toughest stretch on the course. I mean, 11 obviously being such a big par 3, and then 12, if you don't put the ball in the fairway, you pretty much can't hit it on the green, and so you're fighting for par. And I think 12 is probably one of my favorite holes out here. I think it's just a great design. And then 13 through 18. I mean, there's really not much to say. They're just a lot of long, hard, difficult holes.
We're going to stay on this side right here.
Hey, Scottie, not to overthink it, but is changing a putter or changing equipment, like for guys like you, sort of the last line of whatever, like after everything else hasn't worked, or where does it fit in?
I would say it depends on the club. I think if you're looking at like a driver or irons, it's probably a little bit of different discussion. Putting is such a weird thing. Sometimes when you're on the green, sometimes when you feel good, you feel like you're never going to miss, and then sometimes when you feel terrible, you feel like you're never going to make. And so putting is just so different than the rest of the game. And so when it comes to switching putters, I think it's all personal.
We're going to take one from the WebEx. Is there a specific memory from the Walker Cup here that stands out?
Yeah, I remember a lot. I played 2 matches. I remember a lot of both of those matches, and I remember celebrating with everybody on the team after we got done. And we played a lot of golf around this course, and so I just have a lot of memories of hanging out with the guys on that team. You know, a lot of those guys are out here on tour now, and so lots of good memories and with good friends.
One more here. A lot of talk about the par threes this week. Can you talk a little bit about a hole that would play as low as 80 yards?
Yeah, I remember. I don't think I was playing the day that it was 78 yards during the Walker Cup, but 15 is one of those holes where you can kind of do whatever you want with it. It's really kind of a genius design with the way the green is, and I love those little short par threes. I think that's the way most par threes should be, just because there's opportunity for birdie and bogey, and I think they're good separator holes, and so we'll see what the USGA decides to do with that one this week.
Any other questions for Scottie? Right here on back to Luke.
Last putting question, I promise. So when you're trying to like heat up on the greens, or just put something right, is there anything specific that you go back to, maybe mentally, or some drills that you do just to like really focus in on your putting during an important week like this?
I try and focus on it as little as possible. When you're out there competing, I think when you're doing your best, you're kind of just flowing and letting things happen. And so putting is different because it's one of those things that has finality attached to it. Whereas if I hit a really good 6-iron, sometimes it's going to go to 2 feet and sometimes it's going to go to 15 feet. And it's like, oh, well, to you, it doesn't make a huge difference. If I hit a 6-footer and I hit a really good putt and one time it goes in and then one time it doesn't, everyone's like, oh, why did he miss that putt? And it's like, well, actually, I hit a really good putt and there's a heel print, there's something. And putting is such an art that I try not to add too much finality to what I'm doing on the greens. If that makes sense.
Back on the left here.
We all know that our putter needs to be put away and put in a timeout occasionally, and it's glad to see that you were looking at other things. How do you feel about playing on Bermuda for a U.S. Open? Doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, that was one of the things that surprised me most about coming to this course for the first time, was that it was all Bermuda and then the greens were bent. I was expecting, I don't even know what I was expecting. I think I was probably expecting more Poe on the greens than anything. It was unusual just to see pure bent, and so it's a good test. The rough out here can be a bit chancy to where sometimes you can go into it and it can be in rough that's this long in Bermuda, which I've never seen before. And like today, I hit it in the right rough on 5, and it was like 8-inch rough, and I hit a pitching wedge as hard as I could, and it carried like 90 yards. And usually in Bermuda, you're kind of hitting into those areas where you're just trying to judge a flyer. And here, sometimes you're judging a flyer, and then sometimes you're hacking it out. And so it's kind of just a guessing game on what's going to happen when you hit in the rough. And so it's definitely very U.S. Open-like.
Right here at Adam.
Have you reached out to anyone as a second set of eyes with your putting?
No. So my coach Randy has taught me since I was probably 7 years old, and he's taught me everything I know about the game. And so I actually got to see him a couple times last week, which was nice. It was good just getting him out to the course again to hang out. He had surgery a couple months ago, and so we got some good work in on the greens.
How does Teddy help you on the greens?
So Teddy and I read a lot of putts together. I think you've seen that probably since he started caddying for me. He's a great green reader, and he's good mentally, and a lot of the stuff, like I said, putting has that kind of finality attached to it where the ball either goes in or it doesn't, and you're kind of judged by that. And I'm trying to get more and more away from that to where if I hit a really good putt, I'm more happy as to where if I hit like a really good 7-iron into a green and I think it's going to be 2 feet and it comes up 25 feet short, I'm not overly pissed off because I'm like, wow, I hit a great shot. And so if I'm sitting on the greens and I can hit really good putts, it's a lot easier to live with the results. And so I would say the PGA did a good job of that. Colonial did a fantastic job of that. And then I think Memorial I just had a really off week on the greens there, and I'm most proud of what I did mentally there to still somehow give myself a chance to win when I wasn't putting my best. And I think that's something that I've worked on over the years out here being on tour, is having that kind of mental edge and not taking things, I don't know if too seriously is the right word, but sometimes I'd let a few bad swings or bad putts ruin my day, and I didn't do that, and I haven't done that in a while. And so I'm very proud of the kind of consistent results that I put up on the board.
And can I ask one more? Where were you, and what was your reaction to the news last week, PGA Tour and PIF?
I was at the gym, and so I didn't really know what was going on. Still don't really have a clue.
Back to Gary on the right.
Scottie, the average width of the fairways is 43 yards, which seems wide. Effectively, though, what do you think that they are? Is it a quarter less of that? You mentioned 5, like 3, 5, 8, 13 have a lot of tilt to them. How much less than 43 do you think effectively are the fairways?
That's a good question. It really depends on the holes because like 2 and 3, I would say play wider than they are. I mean, 3 is a huge fairway. 1 is tight. 5 plays super small. 6, I don't even know if I'm going to even try and hit the fairway. I don't know what I'm going to do on that hole yet. It just depends. Like 8 plays wider. 10's pretty wide, but then you get to the back 9 and 12 plays so narrow. 13 is so narrow. 16 depending on the wind can play super narrow. It's just, I think this course has a really good mix of holes. And yeah, the fairways may be averaged a little bit wider than they usually are, but when you get fairways that are very firm, any sort of curve you put on the ball makes it play so much smaller. And so with how firm I think we're going to get this golf course, it's going to be a really good test for all parts of the game.
Stay here on the right.
Hi, Scott. You said there that you are still in the dark pretty much about this whole peace agreement that's been broken out. Is that a case of that you're not getting the information you need, or is it just because you're coming up to a major championship, you want to put that all to one side and just forget about it?
Yeah, so one of my big things is controlling what I can control, and so when I talk about golf swings, it's mostly that. Like if I hit a really good 7-iron and it doesn't turn out the way I want to, I did what I could, and if I hit a really good putt and it doesn't go in, I did what I could, and this is another one of those scenarios where I've been focused on preparing for this week, and that's something that's out of my control, and so I don't really know what's going to happen in the future, but I'm interested to see because it does affect me, and so we'll see what happens. But like you said, I don't have a ton of control over that, and like things are really starting to things are barely starting to take form with that whole deal, and so I really just don't know.
Awesome. Well, Scottie, thanks for the time. Good luck this week.
All right, thanks, y'all.